Excellent words of wisdom, and we know that you have pursued passion. You have also been a avid marathon runner and completing, I think, very many successful marathons from your side. And what you said, really, it becomes an obsession for a startup once they start, and then they follow it with another start, and then another start. And that brings us to our next speaker as well, Naveen Tewari. Naveen Tewari graduated from IIT Kanpur in 2000, and he started his first company InMobi, but he has gone into a serial entrepreneurship mode with also starting up Glance and Roposo. He, like Abhay Bhushan, is also a distinguished awardee, and also our next panel member, moderator, Abhiraj Bhal. Globally, InMobi has spread fast and followed with the other companies, and that happened fairly early. And he believes in building the right product and not just scaling for scaling. So please welcome Naveen Tewari and also Abhiraj Bahal. With Urban Company, he's the largest home service platform in India and UAE, with more than 30,000 trained service professionals and 5 million customers. Urban Company's vision is to empower millions of service providers. He's also graduate from IIT Kanpur in 2009. And we have a powerful conversation coming up between the two. I would let Abhiraj Bahal now take over the conversation with Naveen Tewari. Welcome, Abhiraj.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. Thanks for the warm introduction, and thank you, Mr. Bhushan, for very, very inspiring words. I have the privilege and honor to introduce Naveen. Naveen is someone I have looked up to for many, many years. In fact, one of my inspirations to get started out on my own was Naveen. I don't know if Naveen would remember, but way back in 2009, when I was a fourth-year student at IIT Kanpur, Naveen came and gave a talk. And he was 2 years into building MCode at the time, which later became InMobi. And he was already thinking about going global. And as a final year student, it was just an inspiring conversation to listen to. So Naveen, let me start off with my first question for the benefit of all our audiences listening in. Can you tell us a little bit about where the InMobi group is today? It has businesses spanning across advertising, new commerce, social media, and what the journey has been from those early days at MCode to now. This very vast and global business that you have built.
First of all, thank you so much, Abhiraj, for introducing me, and Pradeep, thank you for inviting. And it was an absolute pleasure to hear Abhay Bhushan sir speak. I still remember he'd come to the campus when I was on the campus, and I think that was '98, if I remember rightly. And as a second year or third year student, talking to him at that point of time was my first inspiration. So I think a lot of these things happen at times when you don't know what's really going on, and what leads to something is very, a lot of small events lead to things which change your life. And, you would never know when that would happen. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting. It's a great pleasure to be on this platform. Abhiraj, first of all, congratulations on your business. I think you've built a phenomenal business out there. I'm a customer of it, so I would vouch for its quality. But just to answer your question, I think yes, our business has expanded over the last several years. You're right. We are in with InMobi, we are in the advertising business. The InMobi group has InMobi as a business which is in advertising. It has Glance as a business which is in media, one of the largest media platforms in the world right now, which happens to be on the lock screens. We have built Roposo, and it's just in the early phases of it, but that's in the commerce, so-called new commerce, world, where we think about influencer commerce and live commerce to be as part of it. the journey has been interesting. I think, to me, there has always been, when you start off, you start with failures, and the first few things you try out, they don't necessarily work. So you could either think of them as failures, or think of them as, in hindsight, you could think of them as ways of not things that you don't need to do again. And I think that was the first phase of a lot of things that we did. Made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. At those times, it's very, very hard to get over those mistakes, because a lot of them are so deep and so hard that you may not come out of them again. But I think the journey of InMobi has been phenomenal. We learned so much. We were able to build the first product company out of India and take that global. An enterprise software platform going global was very hard in the beginning, because the platform in the world, when we were asked where you're from, we would say Bangalore, and that would basically not really go down well with people, because we were not in the 2010, 2011, we were not really known for, the country was not really known for building great products. It was known for building great services. And so we would basically be either not given the business or sent away, because that would not send a great sign that you were not based out of San Francisco or Silicon Valley, where all the product companies were created. And I think it did cause a lot of disturbance for us to begin with, because you are trying to sustain and build a business, and on the other hand, you're actually losing out because you're told that you're not from the right location, right geography. The geography is not supporting you. I would say that pumped up the team a lot to create better products, and I had always had the belief that engineers and product managers in India are looking to build the next generation products. They're not just looking to work on products and problems that somebody else owns, and they don't own the problem. And that happened because we've had some phenomenal people creating great product for us, and we were able to essentially get away from this whole challenge of location being a problem. And I think we let our product speak for itself, and you really have to be successful in order for your product to be different. And I think we were able to do that to a certain extent, and saw its success. We of course faced a lot of tough times, and there's no business that goes through its journey where you don't face the tough times. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs, whether you're an early stage entrepreneur or a late stage entrepreneur, to know that it's okay to fail. It's okay to have tough times, and it's okay to feeling as if we'll not last the next year. And I think not just, I would argue that every successful company has gone through a lot of that, and every entrepreneur goes through that quite often. But if you actually stick to the basics, and you're not giving up on the basics, and you don't let your fears overtake you, you will actually be able to do a lot of things. So on one hand, we were scaling InMobi to a great extent, despite facing some headwinds in around 2015. Today, the business is very, very vast. We are one of the top few platforms in the world on the advertising side. Feel very proud of it. The business is scaling very well. At the same time, we never let go of the theme of innovation, because of which we created Glance, which is actually a media platform, a consumer internet platform, which is on the lock screen of the phones. And we decided that we want to change the user experience in the lock screen. And today, we have roughly about 200 million monthly active users on the platform, and it's scaling quite well. We're going global with that platform. So that's looking quite good. And then we decided that, look, the world, can actually, the e-commerce or the commerce in the world needs to change. It needs to be the right blend of what we were used to versus what's the latest e-commerce, approach of doing things. So we are building, things on the commerce side. So we'll see where that goes. But I think one of the things we've done is we've innovated, continued to innovate, despite whatever phase we were in, and we've continued to do so at a global level. And those are two things that have worked well for us. And let's see where the journey is. I am certainly enjoying it. I think we are still in the first day of the test match, so there is a lot more to do.
Thank you for sharing that, Naveen. I think you've packed in a lot of deep insights there. I want to go deep into two areas. One is the whole journey of building Roposo, Glance, and Newcomers. I'll come to that because I find that very fascinating. But let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to 2009, 2010, the years when you were going global and dreaming big. And it wasn't like you had too many role models. There weren't too many product companies from India, as you said, who had thought about going global. And you went into countries like China, you went into South America, the United States, of course. Tell us about that journey. Tell us about like what the motivation was, what the struggles were. How did you think going global, and what those early years were like?
Yeah, look, that was a very tough and a different decision for us because there was no precedence of as a startup there was no precedence of building a global company, let alone in India, but even globally. There were very rarely few companies that were actually thinking of global markets. And that was fair because some of the global companies, or most of the global companies, were either in China or in the US, so they had great home markets. I think where we were, after the first year of our business, which was, focused on India, we realized that if we are very successful, we'll be a small company. Not because of any other reason, but because the market size does not support building a business which is meaningful, building a business that allows you to innovate on technology and something that will scale in itself. I would say there was a large set of people who thought that we should just stick to building the business in India. We just didn't feel like it that way because look, we were in our late 20s. We didn't want to be, we wanted to think big, and we wanted to really make a mark. And it was not about a business that would just make money for us. It was about hopefully building something that's impactful and changes the game, not just for us, but maybe for generations to come. And of course, we didn't have those level of thoughts at that point of time. We just believed very deeply in our ability to go global. And so despite a lot of resistance, we actually took the plunge. I would argue that in some of these things that you do, it's like opening the cricket match, right? When you go into the opening of the match, you could either play like people played in the 90s, that you would just take away the overs and not do it, or you play like you do now, where you kind of go over the top and you take some risks, and so you're off to a great start. I would put it into that bucket for us. I just couldn't understand how not going over the top in the first few overs, that is what it was for us. We would do anything to be even close to winning the game if we didn't do it. Because what it seemed like, if you didn't do that in the business, in the sector that we were in, you would basically be set up to fail slowly, or set up not to win. And I didn't want to be in a zone where you are just set up not to win. So we did take those risks, and it was a hard decision. But in hindsight, actually, I would argue that, and look, you've taken your business to UAE yourself. I would argue that if you're building a business in India, it is you have a lot of resilience as a company, as a country, and you have a lot of global exposure, unlike many other countries. And so taking your business from India to other parts of the world, now you could choose which part of the world is right for you, but to other parts of the world is actually a natural advantage that nobody else can actually have. And so how should we use, there are 3 hubs in the world that are creating technologies, or maybe 4. You have US, which for which US is a great market. So you should not actually even bother about going outside. If you're a US company, you're great there. And if you do well there, then yes, you can set up an international division that looks after other businesses. If you're a Chinese company, China is a great market. You can just stay there, figure out things 10 years later. If you're an Israeli company, you're actually just only building global markets. And if you're an Indian company, you actually can start off in India, test the markets in India, make the mistakes that you need to make in India, and then go global, because you can actually build a 10x size business if you were to essentially think about global markets. And that's what we did. We, by the way, did not go to the US first. We actually went to Asian parts of the world first, which is very counter to a lot of the natural ways of growing. And we realized that if we went to the US market first, we would actually be hit with such significant competition of larger scale that we would not survive ourselves. And so we actually went to the markets which were nobody else was focusing on. And so in the first 3 to 4 years of our global expansion, we actually became larger than most of the companies, or as large as the companies in the US, by not being in the US, but also by spending far less money and actually making the market happen for us. We did go to the US, towards 2013, 2014, and today US contributes to over 60% of our business. So we have actually been able to take significant share in that market also for ourselves. But I would say, but we went to the US, we had a very massively strong product, and we could actually go in and take share away from others at that point of time. So I would say that going global was a risky move. It was trying to be Sehwag at that point of time of our lives. It played well for us, and I would argue that it's actually not as hard. So it should become a norm for a lot of the companies out of India that they should think of global markets.
Yeah, this almost feels like taking the cricketing analogy, like someone who's batting in the second day of the test match, and as a younger entrepreneur, I'm probably batting in the first day. But we think about going global as well. We're now actually present in a few markets outside of India. Started with UAE, we're now in Singapore, Australia, and Saudi. So more in the region. We are actively thinking about first world markets as well. We think it will take us a little bit more time to be ready. But it's fascinating, what you spoke about. I want to talk now a little bit about the middle years. Every company in a hot sector, first 2-3 years, there's a lot of euphoria, investor interest, media interest. It's almost like you said, opening overs of a cricket match, or the first 5K of a marathon. Then you get into the long, arduous middle journey, where there are not as many cheerleaders, where it's about day in, day out. Tell us about those years. Years from 2012-13 to maybe 2018. I know these were ups and downs for InMobi. Walk us through that time. Walk us also through, like, personally how you grew in those years.
Look, the game is always won. If you staying to the cricketing analogy, the game is always won in the middle overs. The fun is in the initial overs and the ending overs, because that's when the fun is there. But you're right. Look, there was a period of 4 to 5 years when 2015 to 2018, which was a tough period for us, and absolutely bang on. It was a period where, while the markets were initially hot, and the media would look at us, and we would be on ET every second, third day. It suddenly it dried out, and you realize so many things at the end of that I would say those were the most formative years for us. And I would argue any company has to go through that period in order to essentially build something which can last for them for a much longer period of time. So from being there were things that happened at multiple levels, I would argue. I think level one, we just didn't know what it took to scale company, right? So, we had a lot of capital. We just thought that, we should just hire a lot of people and that should just do the job. We didn't realize that, in a year, I remember growing from 200 people to 800 people. And these are like 200, like very high end people, to 800 very high end people. So it's, it's not just operational people. These are like, engineers and whatnot. And we realized that, we had completely lost it at that point of time, because we didn't know what it takes to, build a culture. We didn't know what it takes to, have people in the organization who share your vision, what it meant for people to be in your company, why are they even coming to work every day? All of those simple questions we thought were ridiculous questions, because look at this, we are on the front page of the newspaper. You should just be excited by coming on to the coming into the office because we are in the front page of the newspaper. But the reality was that is not how the world works. The world of glamour is basically has to be put away, and you have to put your head down and get to install the basics. So the first thing we solved for, and at least try to understand, was, and I hold this till date, is the culture is the most important piece. Your values are the most important thing, and your people are your biggest assets in technology. And I don't say these things anymore. They may sound cliched, but they're not. I think they're the most important piece for any company to look after. So the thing that we really worked on is first ourselves to realize that, you have to be a lot more minded about, people, product, and then profits. It's not the other way. And so we went after people, and we really, worked very deeply on that aspect of our lives. To first evolve ourselves to understand and empathize with people. Like, you have to learn to empathize with people. You have to learn to be, to empathize with their challenges, why they come to work, why they don't like to work with us, and then make those hard changes. And we made a lot of changes to ourselves in those few years, which was very, very important to us, and we dealt with that. So I think that's the one big thing that we worked on. The second one that we worked on was realizing that the world's not driven by investors. The world is actually driven by customers. Prior to that, the success criteria for us and for the media and for probably anybody else looking at us was, hey, how much money have you raised? And we were one of the early ones to raise money. To very soon realize that raising money is actually should not be seen. If anything, it should be seen probably somewhat negative, because that means that you're not able to build a sustainable business, and you're constantly looking for booster from outside to help grow your business. Now, it's a great thing for investors, by the way, because they are actually exactly looking for that scenario. So your incentives are not necessarily well aligned with them looking to invest into you at all points of time. But your incentive needs to be to build a sustainable business, and we didn't think that was important. So had to go through that change, because building a sustainable business does not get you on the front page of ET. It actually does not make you figure anywhere. And if anything, it basically, you're not glamorous anymore because you're building a sustainable business. And we worked hard on that. And yes, part of it was forced by the external market scenarios, and part of it was forced by the fact that we also realized that just, the market is always not going to be there to keep raising money. So we have to change ourselves. And so we brought in a lot of discipline into how we were to essentially do this. And a lot of people told at that point of time that, look, if you're not raising money, then you're not going to grow fast. And I think that's an absolute crap. We have grown faster without raising money, because you've used innovative methods to essentially scale yourselves. So yes, we became profitable in 2016, have stayed so since then. So that was the second big piece of discipline that we actually did go after. The third big piece that we went after was innovation. And I think what gets you to a certain place certainly keeps you there. So our crux of our worldview was that we innovated on advertising, and it got us here. We realized that in order for us to remain sustainable in the for us to remain sustainable in the advertising space, we have to continue to innovate. So we continued to innovate, and we created an environment of innovation, which meant that we had to retract anything that failed people. That led to people feeling that if they failed, that they would lose out. So we created an environment of innovation, and you can't really predict innovation. That's the beauty of it, right? It has to happen on its own. It's like you can't predict when you will get a great idea. It just happens. And so we allowed for innovation to happen despite all the challenges, and despite being, running a very disciplined engine. And we created Glance out of nothing in 2017, and have been able to scale it since then. So the third thing was that innovation is a constant, and you cannot let go of it, and you always have to keep seeding the things that may come about. And as we have gotten out of that period in 2018, we have just scaled drastically on every dimension of our business. From a people point of view, I was sharing this with somebody a few days back. 45% of our people have spent more than 5 years with us. 80% of my leadership team has spent more than 8 years with us, and is a long timer with us. So on the people front, we kept people. On the innovation front, we have basically innovated on many areas, and on scaling, we are building every business. We were in the B2B business with InMobi. We are now in the B2C business. I absolutely think that new age technology companies need to be on the cusp of B2B and B2C. And if you look at the new age companies, new age technology companies, they will actually innovate on that, on the network effects that gets created between B2B and B2C. And you do not need to sit in those silos. I absolutely don't think so. So again, as a lot of people said, hey, you can either be a B2B company or B2C company. I absolutely disagree with that. It's very similar to thought process that we had when we actually went global. And we have taken that risk of figuring out B2B and B2C, and we think that there is a huge synergy between the two. So whenever I talk to a lot of B2C companies, I actually tell them to think about B2B platforms, because that can certainly scale very differently while maintaining your B2C. But anyway, so those are the things that we have done, we have learned, and we are keeping that on for right now.
I want to double click on the last part that you mentioned, Naveen. I think, one way to think about this is obviously continuous innovation, which, InMobi has done very well. But I almost look at the work that you've done with Roposo and Glance as a second act for InMobi, and it's in the B2C space, as you said. It's not easy for companies to pull off second acts. Many companies pull off first acts very well, but very few of them go on to, create a second act and then start to scale it, right? What do you think led to, InMobi was profitable, it was doing well. What made you, get into Glance and now Roposo and new commerce and start to, fundamentally reimagine what the company was all about?
Look, there are few dimensions at which I can answer this. I think one is the dimension of, we really want to build things which are very, very large, and things which truly impact society in general in a way that's just different. We genuinely want to build something which has not been done globally. So we really don't want to be governed by the principles that were told to us because they were true in some other markets and countries. I think we want to define our own rules, and those rules may just seem odd to begin with, but they may just become our rules if we succeed in them. So I have a very strong belief in those philosophies. That does not mean we become reckless, but that does mean that we will, question the past where it's due. I think that's one. The second is innovation being a constant that was critical to us, and we still is, by the way. So there are a lot of more things probably in this table, some of which will become large. We'll do those also. We'll come out and do those also. I think the crux of what you see as B2C is actually not classical B2C. If you go underneath that, they are all very tightly linked with each other fundamentally. Our growth patterns on the B2C platform are very B2B2C led, by the way. We partner very deeply with large enterprises and do a collaborative model to essentially create what seems from an end consumer point of view a B2C model, but at the depth of it, it's a B2B2C model. Because we absolutely believe that there are enterprises which have assets that could have converted themselves into into something more powerful. And so if you think about Glance as a platform, we work very deeply with a lot of the device manufacturers and the carriers, and said, look, you are the owner of the lock screen, and we can help convert that into something more meaningful, but we do that in a collaborative model. And our depth of enterprise actually came to the picture there. So it was a very seamless model, but it now has evolved into its own independent B2C model. But that's where I was saying, look, companies will function at the intersection of B2B and B2C. And if you can understand that intersection very well, there are not that many people that will understand that intersection. So I am a big believer on that intersection. And whether you think of Glance or whether you think of Reposo, all of those reside at that intersection. So we don't go out there and, for example, we don't go out there and spend hundreds of millions of dollars in customer acquisition because, I actually don't think that's the right model to go. If you look at all the large B2C companies, by the way, you would not see them actually spend disproportionate capital in trying to build, consumer base because they did so with one platform and then they continuously use that. So if you are a company which is successful, if you are a successful B2C company of the past, you should actually see your success as building multiple more such platforms on top of it. And if you didn't, then you've lost out on a great asset that you had because you had consumers. But if you did, then the cost of scaling and the frequency of scaling is actually going to shorten and shorten. So if it took us about about 7, 8 years, 9 years to scale InMobi, it took us about 4 years to scale Glance. It's taken us about 2 years to scale Reposo. So, we are now down to a place where we absolutely understand what it takes to scale the next one. And the crux of that, again, goes back to, having people who can actually do these things in a very different manner. Because, having a leadership team and people who are very motivated by who you can trust, who can take the required risk is very critical, in the broader success.
Very clear, Naveen. Pradeep tells me we have another 5 minutes. So getting into some of my final questions now. Shifting gears a little bit more on the personal side. I want to have a quick rapid fire with you.
Always hate me, just so you know.
First things that come to your mind. 3 words to describe yourself.
Indian, passionate, dream big.
One habit that you're trying to change.
One habit that I'm trying do less meetings. Drastically almost get to a no meeting mode.
And one funny anecdote about your personal life or from InMobi and from the recent past.
Funny anecdote. I am generally told that I'm not very funny, but now you've caught me off guard. Look, we have had I don't know it's recent past because the last year and a half everybody's at home, so there's less of those things happening. But I would say prior to that, our business is in 25 odd countries, and so I would actually end up traveling to a lot of those marketplaces, and especially if you go to these, every country has their own culture and tradition, and I would be traveling for every second day to one country and the next country and the next country. And I would actually start to confuse the cultures just because you're getting up and you're going to the next one and you're trying to do these things, on a day packed. And so I would mess up things in Japan with China and in China with Japan and Korea and something like that. And it would be very, very embarrassing, especially in front of, customers or clients or, people who really value their cultures a lot. And I respect that, by the way. And I would just mess it up big time by doing things which would just be absolutely antithesis of what they needed to do. I would not get into some of those, but I've done my bit of embarrassing myself in these global markets. But it's been funny. I, by the way, gave a speech in Chinese in Mandarin for about 30 minutes. A few years back, and that I didn't know what I said. I thought I was being serious, but I saw the crowd was in splits and they were on the floor. So at least the content was expected to be serious, but clearly it was not. So I didn't try that act again, but it was funny.
Yeah, I think these are some of the nicer moments of building a global company. Final question, Naveen. What does the next decade look like for both the InMobi group and for you personally?
Look, I love what I do. Absolutely think we are in the day one of the test match. There is, a lot of people think, they ask, given that we've been around for 10, 12 years, they say, hey, so what's next for you? And I'm like, wait a second, this is just getting started. We just, it's just been a day or so of this, and we're just getting started. And I think I absolutely, believe. I think Abhay was also mentioning this earlier in his speech, where vision evolves and continues to evolve. And I think even for us, it's evolving pretty rapidly. We absolutely believe that every one of our businesses, and even more that we would have, should continue to scale. I genuinely want to put, take a lot of pride in putting India on the map. When you play sports, and unfortunately, I don't play professional sports. I never played. But even when we did earlier, when I see, when you go for Olympics and when you go for cricket and you win the game and the India flag goes up, that's like a moment of huge pride. And that's the thing that I look for, is to say, look, can we do that in the business, where you're being able to put India on the map in a way in which it is absolutely seen as the wave, the flag, flying at the highest levels, and taking the pride on that. So that's what I would say, that hopefully in the next decade we are able to do this. I think businesses, scale with time, and so you got to give it the required time. And if you think about Amazon in 2006, it was worth $6 billion. Today, we all know it's close to about $2 trillion. So, and in 2006, it was 12 years old as a company. So the true scale up happens when you've laid down all the foundations, and then you can continue to do so. Absolutely a big believer in that. And therefore, I don't know what exactly the next decade would look like, but hopefully it'll be, it'll be more exciting than the previous decade.
Thank you so much, Naveen. This has been a very candid and a very fascinating conversation. Lots of learnings for me personally, as I'm sure they were for all the listeners. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back now to Pradeep. Over to you, Pradeep.
Thank you, Abhiraj.
Thank you for a lovely conversation and great moderation, Abhiraj, from you. And thank you, Naveen, tracing the entire journey, from the thoughts to initial not so successes, but then eventually transforming into success and a global success, and with a very clear thought process. I think it serves as a big inspiration to all of us and the startups which are looking forward. And thank you, Abhay Bhushan. You've always been an inspiration, passion, and working. And both Naveen and Abhay said, things will change. It's not always that you come with a fixed and you continue to take it to the end. So thank you, all of you. It's been a great having you here. Have a great day, and we'll keep in touch.